Hello, and welcome to another episode of The Whole Story. My name is Patrick T. Luce. I am the creator of this YouTube channel, Happy Nightmares, and the author of, at least at this point, all of the short stories that you've heard on this channel. I want to thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. These episodes of The Whole Story are really meant for listeners who have an interest in what goes on behind the scenes in the mind of an author as they're writing a story, the inspiration, what some of the underlying themes might be, and so on and so forth. So this is not really going to be a narration so much as it is kind of a self-interview because it's just me right now. Eventually, I would love to do some of these episodes actually on camera so that you can see me and get to know me a little bit more as an author. But right now, I just don't really have a good setup for that, so we're doing it all audio if that's all right with all of you. In this episode, we are going to be talking about my short story, The Change, which I believe was the second story that I uploaded here to the Happy Nightmares YouTube channel. So if you have not read or listened to it yet, this is your official spoiler alert. Click the link in the description below if you want to listen to the story, and go check it out. It is a short story. It's not going to take a whole lot of your time, and you'll probably enjoy this discussion more if you are already familiar with it. Also, leave more questions in the comments. If you have more questions about this story or other stories that you want to hear about, or different things that you would like covered in these discussions, just let me know. And I'm happy to take those into consideration and make some changes and make this the best that it can be from the perspective of the author. So here is just a real quick synopsis if it's been a while since you've listened to it, or if you're not planning to go listen to the story and you just want to hear about it and this is really all you care about and you don't care about the actual story, that's fine. Here's a real brief synopsis for you. A man regains consciousness to find himself in chains, bolted down to a cement floor, in complete darkness in the middle of a large cage. Throughout the story, he is trying to remember how he got there, taking in all of the strange sounds that he hears around him. He is injected with something by people in hazmat suits, and eventually he feels his insides begin to transform, with the story ending after he physically changes into a massive mindless beast. So that's the general idea of the story. Near the end of the story, just before he transforms completely, all of his memories come back. He remembers his family, he remembers how he got there, but by that point it's too late. There isn't really anything he can do. There is no turning back. Overall, the story is pretty straightforward, but there were a lot of things going on in my mind when I wrote it. As a writer, I'm not really someone who tries to sneakily sprinkle subtext and clever imagery into my writing. Maybe sometimes it happens by accident, which is awesome when that happens. There have definitely been times when I've reread my own stories and I'm like, look what I did there. Cool. I didn't even realize I did that, but it makes a lot of sense. Most of the time, I'm simply inspired by what I'm feeling or just a cool idea, and I just start writing. This particular story was really inspired by one thing that happens in everyone's life, and that's change. It's right there in the title, change. It's unavoidable. We change as we grow from children into adults. We change as our hopes and dreams solidify in our minds. We change as we make friends and fall in love and realize our flaws and strive to be better people. We change as we grow out of our immature belief systems and into more sophisticated ones and strive to grow as members of society. Whatever the reason, we all change over time, and this is something I have always struggled with in different ways. In my younger days, I struggled with change because I liked things comfortable and familiar. I'm a very laid-back person. I wanted my life to be the same way. I didn't like when I would start to feel things that contradicted the way I was living my life and trying to force me to change. I fought against those things, and in most cases, I eventually lost, and normally that was a good thing. But it was hard for me to accept. And now, as I get older and find myself approaching a milestone birthday here in a couple of years, I find myself trying to be a catalyst for change, really just the opposite of what I did in my youth or didn't do in my youth. I realize that I'm running out of time to accomplish the things that I want to accomplish in my life. And it's not really a mortality thing. I'm not necessarily saying I'm approaching death, and so I need to accomplish these things before I die. It's more just from a relatability standpoint and a relevancy standpoint. Once you reach a certain age point, I'm really already at a point where it's going to be much more difficult for me as a person, as I'm approaching 40, to get into the entertainment industry. And, I've been doing this a long time, but this YouTube channel is really the first steps that I've taken to actively just try and make it happen on my own. And so that's really what I'm struggling with right now. And that's where all of you come in. Please subscribe. But a lot of those themes come through in this story. The fact that the main character is in a situation where he is unable to avoid change is exactly what we all go through. It's extreme in the story. Not only is he in a cage without a visible door, he's in chains that are bolted to a cement floor in the middle of that cage. He can't get out of it. He can't escape. And the fact that there are other people coming into his cage and putting something into his bloodstream that eventually causes his transformation speaks to the fact that there are times that others have way more of an impact on what happens in our life than we would like. Think about anyone who was killed by a drunk driver, or got hit by a stray bullet from somewhere nearby, or slipped on water that someone else spilled and didn't clean up. These things can change or end a person's life, and they had literally no control over it. And that's scary. That's a reality for everyone who is blessed enough to wake up in the morning. Other people exist, and their actions affect your life, whether you want it to or not, and whether they intend it or not. Now, let's talk about the other side of the coin, where we are trying to make change happen to improve our situation in life, either financially or romantically or whatever. The representation of that in this story is his memory loss. For 97% of the story, Trace Fishers, our main character, has no recollection of how he got where he is, or of his family or friends or anything other than where he is right now. His life is completely consumed by his current situation and the transformation that is about to take place. When you make a decision to change your life in one way or another, just as others can have an impact on your life, you are having an impact on someone else's life. Now, everyone's situation is different. Someone who is single, living alone, and struggling, and then decides to make a change to improve their situation or put themselves out there is not really what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about people who share their lives with others on a daily basis. Now, this will be most people. This is coworkers, it's a spouse or significant other, it's a partner, it's children, it's stepchildren. It's anybody that you're interacting with on a regular basis where your day-to-day routine is going to play out in someone else's life in one way or another, even if it's very briefly. If someone like that decides to make a big change, and it is something that they are super excited about, or something that they just feel is 100% necessary, it is going to have an impact on everyone around them who shares that life in one way or another. The memory loss in the story is really representing the fact that it is easy to put on blinders to those around you, to want them to bend to your needs because you really want this, and believe that they should just support you 100% from the get-go because they care about you. But that's not how reality works. Everyone in the situation needs to be considered. Now, in the story, it's a little bit different because it's involuntary amnesia, but just the existence of that memory loss is there to represent one's own needs taking complete precedent over anyone else and not even considering them. Now, let's take me for an example. I could plow forward and put out videos on this channel every other day and love every minute of it, but I would be taking all of that time away from my children and my wife and my job, which is my means of supporting my family, which would then suffer. The negative implications of doing that right now would completely negate anything that I gained from it. I have to find a schedule that works for everyone in my family. I need to put in an amount of effort that doesn't negatively impact their daily lives. The point is, change can be intoxicating, and sometimes it can be hard to break out of your excitement for what could be and pay close attention to what you already have so it doesn't get left in the dust. Something else, one of those things that occurred to me after I wrote the story, is represented by the primal hunger that Trace experiences once his transformation is complete. There's a disgusting, stinking piece of meat that falls from a panel in the ceiling that, before he changes, makes him physically ill. And suddenly, after he transforms, that thing becomes very appealing to him. He has become something else, and everything that mattered to him before doesn't matter anymore, just satisfying that hunger, regardless of what he uses to do that. And this small part of the story, which happens right at the end, represents one of the darkest paths that a desire to change can take. And that's a path that leads to addiction of one kind or another. Emotions are hard to deal with sometimes. It can be so tempting when someone really wants to change the way they feel on a daily basis to turn to harmful methods or substances to numb those feelings, initially temporarily. In many cases, this path leads to a fate not all that different from Trace. Before long, all that matters is the actions or substances that dull those emotions. They can consume a person to the point where everything they once loved doesn't matter anymore. Their life is a mere shell of what it was. That hunger, that need to avoid problems or negative emotions overwhelms everything. Yes, I wrote this story for fun. The idea of waking up in the dark and not knowing where you are and realizing people are experimenting on you, it's kind of terrifying. I hope that those of you who listen to the story are entertained by it, but I do find it fascinating that so many facets of real life struggles with change found their way into the story as I was writing it. And that just speaks to how much the subconscious plays an active role in creativity, whether we know it or not. Artists of all kinds, painters, writers, actors, musicians, they all have a direction that they're trying to take things, and they all have a topic that they want to write about or they want to have come through in their art. But there's so much that comes through without them even realizing it. And I guarantee you I'm not the only one. There's no way that I'm the only one who goes back and looks at a previous work and says, so much more exists in that work than what I initially intended. Because I can guarantee you when I wrote The Change, all I was thinking about was writing a story that was entertaining. And yes, I got the idea and based kind of the general gist of the storyline around dealing with change, but there's so much in there that I didn't even intend. The human brain will never cease to amaze me, and I always have so much fun going through my own writing and looking for symbolism and underlying themes that I didn't even realize I was putting there when I wrote it. And if any of you try to say that I did put it there on purpose and I'm just making that up, you're giving me way too much credit. I'm not that slick. I promise you it was not there on purpose, but it really does make you think when you go back and look at the great writers of all time, or who people consider the great writers of all time, the Hemingways of the world, and you take these classes and all of the stories are being interpreted, you just wonder how much of it was intended. And how much of it was accidental, subconscious writing that was no part of the initial process. How many of these people just wanted to entertain or maybe make a statement on the political climate or something like that and end up creating something so much more profound that it lives on for forever in the literary minds of our time and times to come. It's just interesting. So that's really it. Before I sign off, it does seem appropriate with what we talked about today that I send a quick message to anyone out there who relates to those darker themes of this story. If you are someone who is struggling with addiction, or you're dealing with emotions right now that might be pushing you down those darker paths or trains of thought, I am putting some websites up on the screen right now. They are all also linked in the description below. If you are one of these people, please know it is never too late. There is always hope, and the world is a better place with you in it. Don't take one more step down that darker path, because there is a brighter future for you if you're willing to reach out and grab it. The fictional world of scary things is a fun place to visit, but there are plenty of people who are living real-life nightmares every single day. So keep that in the back of your minds, freaky dreamers, and be kind to each other. Thank you so much for watching. I'm so glad you joined me today for this discussion and this author introspective into the short story The Change with me, Patrick T. Luce. I greatly appreciate your time. And if you enjoyed this, if you want me to do more videos like this, if you want me to keep this type of content intermingled with the scary stories and the true stories and all of that I've got going on this channel, please leave a comment and let me know. If you haven't already, please take a moment to hit that subscribe button so that you get notified when a new video comes out. Share this channel with any of your friends that you think might enjoy it. If they're interested in writing, if they're interested in the paranormal, if they're interested in instrumental music, there's a lot here for a lot of different people to enjoy. So please share it with anyone that you can. Keep those subscriber numbers going up. Hit a like on the video. Leave your comments. All of your interaction is appreciated. It helps more than you could possibly know. I will see you in the next video. And, as always, happy nightmares.